Hey there. So I'm Zulu, and I first wanted to just say thank you so much for all of the amazing letters. You guys are all such great writers, and I can tell that you really were taking the story that you just read to heart, and it's pretty big. It's a pretty big part of the history of the Cherokee people in particular, and I really loved reading all of your letters. So I'm really excited to respond to them, share a little bit about myself, and to answer your questions. So, again, as your teacher introduced me to you, I go by Zulu. Mother Smother is my Derby name, and my real name is Zimraya, and I am of African descent, and I haven't been able to trace back as far as I'd like to, but what I understand is that my African ancestors came over to the United States through the slave trade, and then I'm also of Cherokee and Lakota Sioux and Blackfeet as far as the three indigenous or Native American Indian tribes that my heritage represents. So I know that some of you guys were curious about that. So yes, I have ancestors who traveled with the Trail of Tears, and I have been able to trace back some of that information. And it was through some of that journey that some of my ancestors met up with some of the Lakota Sioux, French, and Blackfeet people. And it's a pretty, sad story, but also for me, there's a lot of positivity and unity, and just I have a lot of gratefulness for it, because if that whole situation hadn't taken place, then I don't know, I might not be here. So I wanted to just share a little bit in regards to some of the questions and comments that you guys had. So someone had been asking about if there are still many Cherokee tribes or other tribes that are alive, and the answer to that is absolutely, and at this point, in regards to indigenous people in the United States, there's not a lot of folks that are living traditionally. There are still traditions that are being kept alive, tradition of language, tradition of certain ceremonies, tradition of food, tradition of clothing that is worn for different events. There are a number of tribes that get together and share in some of their differences as far as tribes go at powwows. There are powwows that take place not very far away from us here in the Rogue Valley. And where I grew up was in Washington State, so the state north of us, and I'm not indigenous to Washington State. However, I did spend a lot of my childhood with the Suquamish people. And the Suquamish people live up on the Kitsap Peninsula. If you guys get a chance, you should look it up on a map and look at the area that is now Bainbridge Island, Keystone, all the way up to Port Angeles. There are a lot of tribes there. There's so many tribes in Washington State, but that particular tribe, the Suquamish tribe, is the tribe that I grew up with as a child. I have an aunt who actually married into the tribe, so I got to learn a lot about their traditions. And they're a tribe that is doing really well. They have a casino on their reservation where they're able to make a lot of money and give back to their community. They do still have a school that teaches the traditional language, so a lot of Native folks from Washington speak Salish. There's other languages as well, but kids can still go to school and still learn their traditional language, as well as learn about the traditional foods, which up in Washington, a lot of it has to do with the sea. So a lot of canoeing, fishing, crabbing, whaling is a big part of the Native American culture there. And also a big, part of the sustaining tribes across the United States is the fighting to protect and preserve the land that they still have say over. And I'm sure that you learned a little bit about this in regards to reading about the Trail of Tears, because a lot of the folks that did survive, that did end up on reservations, the reservations weren't the best, the most valuable, the most rich in resource places for people to live. But they tried to make the best out of it, and it's still going on. People are still trying to make the best of it. A lot of people leave the reservation and go out into, other neighboring communities. Maybe they travel to other states. Maybe they travel to other countries just to learn about other culture and to just expand their horizons. So not all Indigenous people stay with their tribe. I wanted to give you guys some encouragement to check out, maybe with your families. There is a really great show that just recently came out. It's an episode that is called Rebel Music, and the focus of the one that I'm bringing up is Native American revolutionary music. And when I say revolutionary, it's just really different than what you might hear when you turn on the radio. The topics that these young people are talking about has to do with protecting the land, protecting their culture, and trying to help their communities still survive and thrive. And so it's short and really educational, and you might find some other information there that you find really interesting, especially after reading of the Trail of Tears. So I had shared a little bit about my African heritage, and in some of the questions you guys asked me, have I ever experienced anything like what you read? Have I ever experienced racism? Have I ever experienced oppression? And the answer is yes, I have. And it started for me at a really young age. I can remember the day that it really was brought to my attention that people focus on the difference of skin color and hair and just the difference of where we come from, who we are. And it was really hard. It hurt. I had a lot of confusion because I grew up with a family that didn't focus on that as much. And, to have people out in the community bringing this to my attention and telling me things I'd never heard before was really confusing as a young child. I was in, if I remember correctly, I was in first grade. And it was a bullying incident. Some kids were bullying me. And at that point, I was really afraid to wear my hair naturally, which is, as you can see, like my hair very much so looks like, my African roots are really representing my hair. I have very curly hair, I have dark hair, and folks don't necessarily even guess or assume that I am Indigenous, other than if you can see I have a really big tattoo that is part of my totem, and this is a blue heron, so that part kind of tells a little bit. Excuse me. But you had asked some of those questions about my experience, and I wanted to just speak about, for a moment, what happened with the slave trade with the people of Africa that were brought over too, because there's a lot of similarities there in what happened with the Trail of Tears. So with the people of Africa, they were pretty much forced, stolen from their land, put onto slave ships, taken across the Atlantic Ocean, and brought to a whole other continent. And a lot of people died during that as well, and were separated from their families and lost their culture. For a lot of those people, they were forced to take on a slave name, a name that was not their original name. And so with that, losing, they lost part of their identity and had to fight to get that back or maintain it. And at some point, I hope you'll learn, or you might already know, about the Underground Railroad, because there's a lot of similarities there in what's continuing to go on for Indigenous people, just keeping those traditions alive and not letting other people tell them to stop teaching their children what is rightfully theirs to know. Let's see, what else? I'm looking through some papers. I took a lot of notes. Just as you guys wrote all these great papers, I wrote some papers too. So I'm hoping that the details of this historic event are given to you as you've received them through your reading of the Trail of Tears. And what I mean by that is we don't always hear about these really sad stories in history. People aren't necessarily very proud of what's happened, or people have a hard time trying to say who they should call accountable. People start to blame and point fingers at people, and so sometimes that forces people to be silenced. And so what I want to encourage you guys with, and I have to end this here pretty soon, but I want to encourage you to never stop asking questions, especially from those that might be directly involved or being affected by a situation or circumstance that something in you is telling you, I think there's more to this, or it's wrong. You might see a situation happening and, know that the way someone's being treated is not right. And asking those people what they might want. You can be an ally, you can be a safe person, you can be a support to help make change, because that's how we grow and that's how we heal from these things that are really sad. We have to be able to sit down and talk peacefully with one another and create solutions that will last. So I hope that as you hear other stories of other people's history that might not be so happy and have these sad pieces to them, that you will feel confident and comfortable to just ask questions, especially from those who have been directly involved, because they are more of the experts and they can give you more of the truth, just like you're asking me, and I'm able to share my experience with you and give you more of the truth. So I'm going to look at my notes one more time, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. And, this has been so fun for me. I'm so excited that you guys are going to get to watch this and have your questions answered and just get to hear from somebody who is Cherokee. And, I have a lot more that I could say about it. I thought about sharing some pieces to just represent my native culture to you, but I didn't have enough time, so I didn't get them together. But maybe in the future that could happen, and I could talk even more with you guys and share about specifics of my Cherokee heritage and what specific kinds of traditions we have and we do around food and clothing and decoration. One thing I want to share with you, I'm wearing these really beautiful earrings right now. They are turquoise, and turquoise is really special to the Lakota people, the Sioux Lakota Indians. And I often like to adorn myself, not just with beautiful artwork that's Pacific Northwest tribal art here, but earrings and rings and things that represent my culture and remind me of where I come from and help me to feel really happy and positive about just the fact that I'm here, I'm alive, I'm able to tell my story and able to be a part of the change, the positive change, so that these kinds of things don't continue to happen. And I wanted to end with the question someone asked me about the rose stone. Gosh, those are so pretty. I hope you guys got to see some real pictures of them. And in my family, there's actually one rose stone that got passed down, and it's really special. And my mom has it. My mom's the only daughter on that side of my family that is of Cherokee heritage, and she has the rose stone that was passed down, and it actually was made into a ring. And one day it will be mine. And I'm a mom, I have a daughter, and one day it will be hers. And we don't wear that ring. We just keep it somewhere in our house that's really special. Maybe you have a place like that. In our house, we have like an altar. It's a place where we bring fruit and we bring flowers, and sometimes we sit at the altar and we just think about what we want to happen in our lives, in our day, and kind of like where we wish or we pray or we just think and focus on what we're hoping to create in our lives. And so this rose stone is a really special piece because it represents to us survival. It represents that even though we have a lot of ancestors that went through a really hard time, there are those that survived so that we could be here. And so that gives us a lot of hope. And it's just beautiful. Beautiful things come from this continent where, the indigenous people, the Cherokee, are originally from, and we still want to appreciate that and honor the earth too. It's a big part of Native culture, is to look at the trees, look at the other animals, look at every being, every living thing as an equal being to you. And that's not how everybody thinks about being a human. Sometimes we think about being the more dominant species and that we get to just kind of have what we want and control it, but there's a balance to life. And so we keep that balance. The rose stone represents that to us because it's not about having a pretty ring to wear around to kind of show off. It's about holding something that's really special and protecting it and really appreciating it and treating it really gently, and so that it can be passed on to someone else and they can feel that energy that's been added to it over many generations. So I wish that I had the rose stone to give to you. It won't be given to me until I am at least 40 years of age. So not at this time. Well, I think that's all I have. I hope that you guys feel like I answered your questions well. If not, I would love to hear back from you, and I would love to do this again. This has been really fun, and I'm really proud of all of you guys for being so honest and going through the story and really thinking about it and connecting with it, and for inviting me to participate with you. So I hope that you guys have a great break, and maybe we'll see each other in the future, okay? Take care. Bye.